A very beautiful day to you all. Welcome to this episode of Philosophy Lectures with Professor Tunde Akande. In today's episode, we shall be talking about the topic titled The Concept of Knowledge. The Concept of Knowledge. Recall that in one of our previous lectures, when we talked about introductory epistemology, we mentioned that the concept of knowledge is the subject matter of epistemology. So today, we are looking at the concept of knowledge proper. So, what is knowledge? There are three different senses in which the word knowledge is used. In one sense, we use it to mean acquaintance or familiarity. It is in this sense of knowing that we say, for example, that we know a person or place. If I say, I know Richard, it means I am familiar or acquainted with Richard. So that is one sense in which we use the word knowledge. In the second sense, we use knowledge to mean know-how. In this connection, knowledge means ability. An example of this usage is to be found in such expressions as I know how to ride a horse, I know how to ride a car. This practical sense of knowledge emphasizes the application of skills and abilities. In the third sense, the word knowledge is used to imply certainty. This sense of the use of knowledge is called the propositional sense. And it is this sense that we imply when we make expressions such as, I know that I am an African. I know that he is a brilliant person. When we use knowledge in this sense, we are saying that we are absolutely sure that what we claim to know is the case. In epistemology, we are only interested in the propositional sense of knowing. In other words, epistemology is not interested in the previous two senses, but only in the third sense, which is the propositional sense. Epistemology is interested in the use of knowledge that implies certainty. Okay? Now, to know in the propositional sense involves three elements. These are belief, truth, and justification. Knowledge entails belief because belief is a psychological stage of knowing. It is a psychological or inner attitude which one has towards what one knows. One must believe what one claims to know. Thus, it is not consistent to say that you know something which you do not believe. Yes, belief is a psychological or inner attitude which one has towards what one knows. What this means is that knowledge usually begins as a belief. you begin to think that such must be the case, even though you do not have complete evidence for it. So you begin by believing it, by thinking that it must be the case. And as you gather more evidence, that belief moves gradually from the level of mere belief to the level of certainty, where you are now sure that what you were merely thinking is the case is actually the case. That is why we say that belief is a psychological stage of knowing. Knowledge begins as a belief, and as you acquire more evidence, as you get more and more proof for what you think, such belief metamorphoses or graduates into the level of knowledge, on account of the fact that you have now gathered more evidence. So that is why we say that belief is a psychological stage of knowing, or that knowledge entails belief. So inside knowledge there is belief, and that is why you cannot say you know something which you do not believe, because before you get to the level of knowing something, you must have started by believing it, and it is only when the belief gradually metamorphosed into what is certain that it graduated into knowledge. So knowledge entails belief. Okay? Belief is therefore a defining characteristic of knowledge. However, knowledge is not a defining characteristic of belief. That is why belief is inside knowledge. You cannot say that knowledge is inside belief. Thus, to say, I believe but do not know it, is a consistent and logical way of speaking. It is possible to believe something and not know it, but it is impossible to know anything without believing it. This is based on the explanation I have already given. Okay? Knowledge also entails truth. When you claim to know anything, you are in effect claiming that that thing is true. You cannot say, I know P, but P is not true. If you do, you will be contradicting yourself. Once you have a cause to believe that a proposition is not true, you automatically negate any claim to knowing it. So, knowledge entails truth. That is, inside knowledge, you have truth. Therefore, knowing P is knowing that P is true. And it is this point that H.H. Price seeks to establish when he says, knowledge is neither true nor false. Only belief is. To say that knowledge is true is a tautology. And to say that knowledge is false is self-contradictory. When you know something, you do not only have an opinion, but that opinion is true. So, to have knowledge, to claim to have knowledge, is synonymous with claiming that what you know is true. So, you cannot say you know something, but that thing is not true. And according to Price, to say that knowledge is true is tautological, because truth is inside knowledge already. To say that you know is another way of saying that that thing is true. And to say that knowledge is false is self-contradictory, because what constitutes knowledge is already true. Okay? That is what Price is trying to say, all of this. So when you know something, you do not only have an opinion, but that opinion is true. Knowledge also entails justification or evidence. Another word for justification is evidence. To have evidence for what one claims to know is to have proof for it. To have proof is to have experienced it in one way or the other. This means to have either tasted, seen, touched, or had it. One cannot claim to know a thing and not have evidence for its truthfulness. So, truth also entails evidence or justification. Inside truth, there is justification, because to say that you have knowledge is another way of saying that you have evidence for it. For you to say that you know a thing, you must have perceived it one of the numerous ways of perceiving. Therefore, knowing entails evidence or justification. A knowledge that is backed by evidence is said to be justified. And it is all this that led to the conception of knowledge in traditional epistemology as justified true belief, JTB. Yes, this is how knowledge is defined in traditional epistemology. What this means is that for a claim to qualify as knowledge in traditional epistemology, it must be a belief that is true and justified. That is, these criteria were taken to be individually necessary and collectively sufficient for any claim to pass as knowledge. So, in traditional epistemology, knowledge was defined as justified true belief. That is JTB. Knowledge in traditional epistemology is defined as JTB. And the reason is what I have been explaining, that knowledge entails those three elements, the three elements of justification, truth, and belief. So knowledge entails belief, justification, and truth. And that is why knowledge is defined as justified true belief in traditional epistemology. This conception of knowledge, that is justified true belief or JTB, has however been challenged by Edmund L. Gettier. According to Gettier, it is possible to meet these three conditions of knowledge and yet not have knowledge. And this has come to be known as the Gettier problem in epistemology. Remember, we mentioned that because of the explanations I have given, that knowledge entails those three elements of justification, truth, and belief. Knowledge was defined as justified true belief in traditional epistemology. knowledge was defined as justified true belief, that is JTB. But this conception of knowledge has been challenged by an epistemologist known as Edmund L. Gettier. Gettier is saying that it is possible to have those three conditions and yet not have knowledge. That contrary to the claim that those three conditions are individually necessary, collectively sufficient to have knowledge, that one can actually meet three of them and yet not have knowledge. And this criticism of Gettier has come to be known as the Gettier problem in epistemology. So, in our subsequent lectures, we shall take a look at the Gettier problem in epistemology, where we shall be explaining how Gettier has explained that it is possible to meet the three criteria given as the conditions of knowledge in traditional epistemology, and yet one will not have knowledge. Gettier gave some illustrations, some examples to show how one can have those three, how one can meet those three conditions and yet not have knowledge. So we shall be taking a look at that in our next lecture. We shall be looking at whether Gettier succeeded or not, whether we are coming back to Gettier's to the traditional conception of knowledge or not. And the significance of using the expression traditional conception of knowledge is because of this Gettier's critique. So, because Gettier has criticized the definition of knowledge in traditional epistemology, there have been attempts in modern and contemporary epistemology to redefine knowledge, to say or to argue that a fourth condition needs to be added to the conditions of knowledge. And some other people have come again to criticize Gettier, to say that Gettier cannot be taken seriously. And so we shall look at this all of this in our next lecture to see how Gettier explained his criticism and whether he succeeded or not. So I encourage you to stay tuned and look forward to this next lecture. And as you await that lecture, I wish to pause here and bid you goodbye for today till I come your way in the next lecture. Goodbye for now and have a beautiful day.